It is true that it doesn't take long for the number of mortise and tenon joints to add up when you're building something like a stool. But then everybody knows, if you've watched some YouTube, that all you need to do to put one of those together is buy one of those pocket hole jigs and put it together with that. Seriously though, you can put together a stool with pocket hole screws. I've seen it done. You can also put it together with through screws, through the legs type thing. And what the screws do is they kind of replace or they simulate a tenon. If you reinforce those with dowels, like if you drive screws in and then drill holes above and below for actual dowels to go in, they will really strengthen the joint as well. And you'll have those exposed dowels there. And some people like that and some people don't. I don't really care when it comes to something like a stool, because a stool typically is not a piece of fine furniture, so I'm not really concerned with the joinery and what shows and what doesn't show. You gave an example of that lumber rack that you built and the shelf that you built that went down in your basement. I have a lumber rack right here. It's not holding as much lumber, of course, but it doesn't involve any mortise and tenon joints. Same thing for the shelving unit that I built for my basement that basically is around, I think, 16 feet long and is holding all kinds of junk now, and it's not showing any signs of stress, and there's not a single mortise and tenon joint involved there. So basically what I'm saying is that you seem to be inventing places for the mortise and tenon joint that you really don't need it. Now, of course, when you're building furniture that's going to get used a lot, mortise and tenon joints really work well, because what they do is they withstand that movement that happens over time. If the glue happens to release, starts to break down or whatever, the mortise and tenon joint will still hold together reasonably well. But it's basically the same for screws, if you use enough of them and they are the right size. And the same goes for dowels. Whatever you can do with a mortise and tenon, you basically can do with a dowel, and they're comparable in strength. Now, as for the infeed table and the jointer, the inclined plane like I used here, as opposed to the parallelogram mechanism that you made that has all those rods and parts, and by your own admission was more complex than you would have liked. This is basically dead simple. All I had to do was build the infeed table with the inclined plane and then build this ramp separately and then clamp the two together with the knobs that I built in to tighten, and then use straight edges to line up the tables and then tighten these bolts. That's all there is to it. And then add the mechanism on the back here, which is dead simple also, for raising and lowering the table. So here's the pantarouter that you gave me. Even though it was stored down there, it was still dusty. I had to blow that off and sweep it out to make it look pretty for this. I have used it, as you know, and you know that I used it. I was making a project or doing a video about the strength of mortise and tenon compared to, say, a typical glued and screwed joint. I had it set up here and I did all the stuff. I made all the cuts after setting this thing up, and the results were not spectacular enough for the content for a video, I thought. What I basically did was I made the things and then I broke the joints, but you couldn't see anything really spectacular happening. They just broke, and basically at the same place in the same way. I kept the footage up until about a year ago, and then I just got rid of it because I thought I would redo the test at some point in the future. So that is coming up. I just haven't gotten around to it yet, and I will use this machine. I do want to point out one thing about it, though, that I didn't like when I first got it. Not looking a gift horse in the mouth or anything, but this is something that this machine really needs, and that's a center line that's clearly marked on both the table and the tool holder thing up here, so you can accurately index these together. And so I started out to try to lay that out and do it, but I said, this takes more precision. I want to do this accurately. Also, as you pointed out to me when you gave it to me, there was a problem with this tool holder arrangement. Apparently it's not square or straight, and I thought that at some point in the future I would remake this from acrylic that I have and make some improvements on it so that it works better. You know, I'm thinking about getting back into electronics, and I'm looking at this and I see there's a lot of aluminum here.